judge now that said that the treasurer doesn't have the right to put somebody in charge of looking at their expenditures. The Treasury cannot look at its own, legally cannot look at its own expenditures. And we've got a court order saying that. Things have gone that far out of control.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone way beyond U.S. aid. That was the beginning of it.
Right.
Circumvent Congress, put all this money into U.S. aid, and let them go about things that Congress didn't appropriate, and send the money wherever
And
they
all the
want.
screams, just because the camel has his nose under the tent.
Yeah.
This has the potential. And I think it's enough to sicken most of the.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Markets and Madness. As we like to say, the place where we discuss the madness that occurs when politics, economics, and personalities all move in different directions. Today is the Monday after the Super Bowl, and in my eyes, what I saw was a very patriotic red, white, and blue Super Bowl, very different from the sporting events and the things that we've seen over the last couple of years. It was pretty much pro-America, anti-corruption, anti-deep state, if you want to refer to it that. What did you think, Tim? You were watching the game. I know we were texting pretty much all night.
It was a pretty remarkable game for openers, but there's a cultural phenomenon going on. I think I may have said this before. They say that a definition of a conservative is a liberal that's been mugged. And this
Right.
country feels like it's been mugged for 4 years or
Yep.
8 years or how many years.
40 years.
And I think Doge is highlighting it. I never saw so much screaming about an audit in my life. I mean, I've always said, I always wondered how many people are collecting Social Security. I think I said that here
Yeah.
so many times. And the numbers I'm hearing are really remarkable. Senator Kennedy was talking about it, and he's a class act, just watching him. And they're uncovering stuff, and it's going to go on. The level of waste and fraud and abuse we've known for years has been mind-boggling. But the lack of attention they pay for it and the willful looking away. I mean, Social Security's grown broke. We've been hearing that for years. How much are they stealing from Social Security? How many people, how many illegal aliens have captured Social Security cards and numbers probably from cemeteries and are collecting checks and the banks are turning a blind eye to it. It's amazing.
I read something this weekend, and it was just one guy's opinion without real facts, but the idea stuck with me. He says, we've been talking about the $2 billion aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. He says, what if they really only cost like 250 million to make, and the rest of that money is going to these black ops budgets that are out there, or that have disappeared? You can't really trace them down. They're going somewhere, and that's how they're. The idea of a deep state is certainly prevalent from what we've seen from this
Well,
audit.
if you
And,
just
and
think
just I
about
just
it,
want to stop you quickly. I always say the last couple of podcasts, I've encouraged people to send us their comments and their thoughts, and we joked about the old Dean Martin show, keep your cards and letters coming. And we have been getting a lot of comments. And one comment came up and said, "Isn't there some issues with Musk and Starlink?" And my response was, "Yeah, I'm sure there is, but as long as there's transparency, as long as we can get it out in the open and find out who's paying what to whom for what, then we can make a decision whether this is corruption or this is just a fair trade." And we haven't even gotten into the depth of the defense budget. So I think there's going to be a lot of money that's going to have changed hands between the Department of Defense and Starlink or Tesla or any of the other Musk companies that are out there. So I think we're going to have a lot of scrutiny, but as long as it's out in the open, I don't think that it's a problem.
but think about this. Let's say we're in 2025 now. Let's say in 2015, you managed to secure a Social Security number and you've been getting benefits. And you don't collect a check anymore, you've got some kind of bank account. So you're collecting maybe $25,000 a year from Social Security. You're an illegal, And I don't know that, I mean, I assume this is happening, but $25,000 a year for 10 years is 250,000. That's one illegal. One guy collecting Social Security. Is it 1,000? Is it 100,000? Is it a million? How many people? We don't even know to the nearest million how many illegal people entered into the country. They they've been using the estimate of like 12 or 14 million for 25 years now. We know that number's not realistic. But realistically, you're probably talking about 25, 30 million illegals. Let's use 20 million illegals to be safe. You got 20 million that, and let's assume further that 5% of them have stolen Social Security cards. Okay? So you got 5% of 20 million, which is 1 million, at 25,000 a year for 10 years. So that's 1 million times 250,000. I think we're at, what is that? I mean, the numbers are starting to,
Is
you
it
got
12 and a half billion? I
zeros.
don't know.
You're at, you're at 25 billion anyway.
25 billion, yeah.
Easily, easily. You probably, I mean, I actually, I'm doing these numbers off the top of my head. I used to be better at this, but if you got a million illegals collecting $25,000 a year, it's 25,000 times a million. That's 25 billion. It's staggering. It's staggering. Trump's trying to find 2 trillion. He'll probably find 5 in Social Security alone.
Right, right. It really is remarkable. The speed. This is all happening.
But we're told that Social Security's going broke. So we need more to go into the trust fund. And the trust fund is gone anyway. That lockbox that they had has bought securities, has been financing the debt. It's a Ponzi scale on the order at which no human being in the planet throughout history has ever seen. The
Yeah,
numbers are staggering.
it really is. And you can't grasp how vast it is, you know. And the people that are fighting the idea of Doge, how do they justify that argument?
Well, you've got a judge now that said that the treasurer doesn't have the right to put somebody in charge of looking at their expenditures. The Treasury cannot look at its own, legally cannot look at its own expenditures. And we've got a court order saying that. Things have gone that far out of control.
Yeah, I mean we've gone way beyond U.S. aid. That was the beginning of it. Circumvent Congress, put all this money into U.S. aid, and let them go about things that Congress didn't appropriate, and send the money wherever
And
they
all the
want.
screams, just because the camel has its nose under the tent.
Yeah,
This has the potential. And I think it's enough to sicken most of the country.
yeah. Well, that's my point about the Super Bowl. It was a very different. The commercials seemed different. It seemed like people have just had enough.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, if you assume that the country, let's assume that 25% of the country, 30% of the country are left. And of that, right, a third of them are very hard left. So you got 10% of the voting electorate that are hard left. And they don't want those to look any further. They're screaming about, their privacy, and a 19-year-old kid is looking at, has access to their Social Security. Yet, they're putting stuff online about where I'm going on vacation and I'll be away for 3 weeks and this is my address. It's
Yeah.
really just amazing. The tail has been wagging the dog for a long time.
So long, and it seems like the conservatives now, Trump now, he doesn't have to tiptoe around anything. He's going full speed ahead. He knows what he was up against in the first term. And he said, we're not going to fight the battle that way. We're well beyond nuclear arms between this race.
I came in this morning. I was looking at the markets. We woke up at night, looked at what was going on in Europe and Asia. And I expected this market to sell off because of the tariffs. Because tariffs have become the boogeyman. But we rallied, and we rallied fairly significantly.
Even
So,
even gold is way up today. New highs for gold.
well, gold is a whole other animal here. So there's shortages of deliveries. A lot of people are taking physical delivery of gold. The LME.
Are they subject to tariffs?
Good question. Good question. I think Iran probably has something to do with the gold move too. They slapped more sanctions on Iran.
Yeah, and Trump did. We talked in the last podcast about this was more of a diplomatic tariff than a an industry specific or a product specific tariff. But read this morning where he's putting a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum.
Yeah, he's focused on that.
So
And I
that's
think
become
that's
an
part of
economic.
the U.S. steel deal with Japan. He just met with Japan to talk about the U.S. steel deal. And from what I read, it sounds like he wants them to come in as investors as opposed to owners. They wouldn't own U.S. Steel. This company would not own U.S. Steel. It would simply invest in the American company, U.S. Steel.
And share in the benefits, but not have ownership rights,
Well, maybe ownership rights, but certainly not control.
like a Class B owner.
Yeah. There's so many things happening at the same time that you really can't, and any one of them is a big move.
Right.
Yeah.
What he's done, if he would have accomplished this in the first year, people would have been amazed, right? Getting down, digging as deep as he has into U.S. aid, into the other budgets. Done it in the first month.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't really, I mean, it hasn't been codified, you know? The bulk of what he's done has come from executive actions and the bully pulpit. It hasn't been legislated and written into law, and it's not going to be, not with the kind of majorities that the Democrats have. Unless, to say this, unless there are Democrats that are forced to go along because they're going to lose their seats if they don't.
Right. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I think the country's fed up.
You think
they've
blue
had enough.
districts are turning red in a big way?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. I think people have had enough. Just look at, and I don't know how true this is, but I read this stuff on social media about North Carolina that 80% of the issues were dealt with in a week, and it's taken 4 months to get to that point, to do it within a week, right? You
You know,
still have
that's the kind of thing that will turn a blue or purple state red
yeah,
in a big way. If you're living in a trailer for 4 months and freezing your ass off at night, and you're going out for coffee, and the kids are screaming because you're inside, and all of a sudden he waves a wand, and relief helps. People will never forget that.
right. And
That'll go on for generations.
talking about ending the Department of Education, that's going to make a big difference. And I saw a quote last night. Bill Maher, above all people, had somebody on, and they were talking about, how could he do this with test scores as low as they are? He said, well, maybe that's why he's doing it.
It was Rahm Emanuel. It
It
was
was
Rahm
Rahm Emanuel, because the test scores have been getting worse.
Yeah, why do you have a Department of Education? And the way they dole out the money, I don't know why I know this, but the school lunch programs are huge. And the more people allegedly you feed in the school lunch programs and the after dinner programs, your school budget is predicated on that. So they build up those numbers enormously. So maybe you're feeding, 400 kids. It's in your best interest to feed 4,000 kids and put another 4,000 at night in an after-school program because your budgets are predicated on those numbers. Those numbers support your budgets. So we've seen padding in 95 different directions for the Board of Education. And maybe some of it will survive down to the state level because that's probably equally corrupt. But we're looking at corruption at levels that we have scarcely imagined. I could see when it really comes out, if it ever really comes out to light, that the Social Security Administration has been ignoring all these dead people. Yeah, I don't want to look at that. That's a mess. Don't open that drawer. Don't look at that file. You don't want to see that file.
No, he's talking about saving $1 billion a day, finding
You
$1 billion
know,
a
there's a
day.
Doge clock now. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I saw it on Fox Business. They got a Doge clock, and it was up to about 80 billion last time I looked, and it's spinning away, just like the national debt clock is.
That's amazing.
This guy, I mean, really, they should really make this guy an honorary founding father.
And people are screaming and yelling, "We didn't vote for Musk." Well, he was out on a campaign trail talking about all of this stuff. I think we did vote for Musk, and we did vote for RFK, and we did vote for Tulsi. These are the people that were all over. So how the left can say this is not what we were bargained for?
And we didn't vote for Fauci,
Yeah,
and we didn't vote for Hunter Biden,
Soros.
and we didn't vote for all these people. Yet we had to eat what they served us. This is a fascinating time. We're going to be embarrassed as a country when we realize what we tolerated for years.
Yeah, these are generational moves. Something I was reading this morning said that the right, the conservatives, didn't know how to fight, didn't know how to deal with the corruption, with everything that went on, with the twisting, and it seems like Trump and his team, his band, have figured out,
Yeah,
and it's
Trump's got a few things. I got a few tactics that Reagan didn't have. Reagan had a couple of things that Trump don't have. Reagan could disarm your enemy. I remember once they asked Reagan, they said, you said this, blah, 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 blah. And he said, yeah, I was a Democrat back then. I said a lot of stupid things. How do you fight that? He was just so good at that.
that's
Trump doesn't have that.
right. That's true. That was the famous debate. What was it with Dukakis? He'd be be in the middle of the water. He voted against that battleship.
He voted against that aircraft carrier. It was up to him, he'd be standing in the water. That was great.
That was right.
That was terrific.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. He really was.
Yeah, if Trump had that, and maybe he'll develop that. He's second term Trump is really different than first term Trump.
Yeah, because he knew where the snakes were. He knew where the landmines were.
I don't know how anybody could know. They're so penetrated into the underbelly of the system. They're inside all the gears and all the woodwork and all the mechanisms. Nobody could ever know. We're going to
Yeah,
find out.
but he knew not to trust the people that put him in touch. You're going to recommend this guy because this is a good guy. He's been here for 20 years. And the first term Trump said, okay, we'll go along with that. Second term Trump said, no, I got my team because we're going to
He's got quite a
disband.
team. I'll
We're
tell
going
you
to
that.
break it all down and build it up again.
I was thinking of going into constructing a document with pictures of the old cabinet and put the new cabinet beside each picture. Levine,
Yeah,
Alejandro Mayorkas, and Christy Nome.
yeah, yeah. Side by side, they're not good people. Levine was the right choice for health education, but RFK's not.
About Duffy and the transportation imbecile.
Yeah,
Who was,
Buttigieg,
yeah,
Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete, driving there with his SUV and then taking his bike out.
For the last 400.
How'd you like to be in Palatine, you know, inhaling that smoke and watching your water boil all over the water and
Yeah.
nobody shows up? It really was a travesty. I'm embarrassed for what this country was. It feels like the Carter days when I look back. I don't know if you were in the market then, but when they tried to rescue the hostages in Iran and those helicopters, that was I think that was the day I was most embarrassed to be an American. Because I went in and all the Brits were making jokes about the Jimmy Carter Desert Classic and how how the helicopters crashed in the desert. And I thought,
remember.
we can't even do this, This was nothing like the raid in Entebbe.
But Carter and his team, I don't just want to pin it on Carter, but he was inept. He wasn't criminal, And I think what's gone on for the last 3 or 4, 5 administrations, there's been foresight. They've been looking forward about how to steal and how to manipulate and how to manage.
I assume so. I mean, hopefully we'll know. They're very powerful, and like I say, they're inside the gears. They got spies and zealots all over the place. I mean,
Mhm.
they're leaking raids, alien raids on Homeland Security. I mean, they're doing things that we would have called treasonous 50 years ago.
What about the mayor of my home state here in New Jersey
Yeah,
saying that he was harboring an illegal in his garage?
kind of, you're right. You're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. But I can understand that. And, a woman works for you and she's got kids and you get to know her. But not if you're the governor.
But you could help him become a citizen. You could help the process along. Let
See,
me put
there's the
somebody.
difference, right? There's the difference right there. We grew up to recognize that there was a system, a process in place. And when it was flawed, you try to fix it or you did something about it. The way it is today, when it's flawed, you ignore it and you ignore the rules that set up. You don't fix the system because you shrug your shoulders and say it can't be fixed. I'm going around the system. And we've gone around the
System's too
immigration
powerful.
system for way too long.
System's
You
too.
can up the number. However, how many aliens do we allow in? 3 million, 4 million? Make it 20 million. Pick a number, but live within the system. Have them register. Have them come in. Nah, the system's no good. We can skillfully avoid it.
Yeah, yeah, I know we've talked about it a lot. The idea of sanctuary cities, and if the governors aren't going to um, adhere to the rules and regulations and policies and laws of the state of the country, what makes you think normal citizens will?
Governors, the county leaders, the town councils, the mayors. It's at every level.
And judges, for that matter, too. Judges have just dismissed it. No, we're not going to do it that way anymore. It really is. It's
It's
fascinating.
it's not much of a podcast as much as it's a bitch session.
It's a rant. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk about the markets. I expected tariffs to hit the markets today, and I think the focus on whether or not tariffs inflationary is totally misguided. I think Jared's point was much better. You eliminate regulations far exceeds any inflationary impact of tariffs. Tariffs hit imports.
Yeah.
Now, that said, even domestic manufacturers are using foreign parts, so they're going to be hit tariffs. They're going to be inflationary, I think. But consumers can shift into domestic products in some cases.
My neighbor down south brought up a point to me last week. He says, there's so many things that move back and forth over the border. Starts with this part. I'll send it over to you. You put this together, send it back to me. I add something else to it, put that engine together, send it back to you. Is each time it goes through, does it get hit with a tariff? And if so, does that 25% tariff become a 400% tariff after you're
But
done
that's the
putting it?
problem with a consumption tax. As it goes at each level of production, it's taxed, and the tax is on the tax. It's like compounding interest. Yeah, they're going to have to work around that somehow if they do that.
Yeah, we don't know the answers to where that's going to go.
It's at the meeting I've been saying it's a good time to hide out. You might miss a boat, but it's better to miss a boat than get on one that sinks. And big changes are here. If they start fooling around with the carried interest on investment, the deductible carried interest, that changes the picture for all the financing that's been done in so many ways, in so many directions. And all of a sudden, capital is going to flow out of one place and into another. And you could be on the wrong side of that.
Hmm.
It's a good place, good time to hide out.
Yeah, and if you look at places to hide, gold is making new highs. So you look at the metals, you look at some of the commodities, they're doing very well.
Yeah, and the dollar's up against gold. Sorry, the dollar's up against other currencies, and gold is up. So you seldom see gold and the dollar move in the same direction,
Hmm.
but they are. And I think when you look at the dollar, you're measuring it against other countries that are inflating less than we are, or at least that's the perception. I don't know if that's true anymore. But going forward, inflationary expectations are being reduced, and you got a 10-year now that's under 4.5. We were over
Four and
470,
three quarters.
475 not too long ago. That's a big move.
And as I pointed out last week, I think the Treasury Secretary is saying that he's focusing on the 10-year. He's not going to get into a fight with the Fed. Doesn't need to get into a fight with the Fed. Let them do what they want. They don't want to. They don't want to ease. All right, we'll wait. The banks will work that out in the overnight market. But let's focus on getting inflation down. Let's focus on getting productivity up. Let's focus on the big things that are going to change the economy. The overnight rate's not going to. Yeah,
Reducing the debt,
regulation. Yeah,
and you change the issuance numbers around. We've been living with huge issuances, and you reduce the interest on the debt at the same time. Yeah,
yeah.
he's got a good plan.
I think he does. And you know what? I was talking to Al about it this morning. There was a time right after the election, probably mid-December, where his new chief of staff told all the cabinet appointees, be quiet, take a step back, don't do any more interviews, shut your mouth, sit in the corner, let's wait till January 20th. And I think this was all in the works. I think this plan has been going on since election day. This is what we're going to do. And they were working warp speed for those 2.5 months prior to the inauguration. And he didn't want anybody involved. Everybody stay quiet. We don't need
It was a
anybody leaning
skunk
over our
works.
shoulder.
It was a real skunk works.
Yeah. Yeah. Played their game. Yeah.
Good to see.
All
Enjoy
right.
it while it's here, because who knows where we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that was as you say, a good bitch session. Get everything off my chest. And it just came to me watching the game yesterday. All the commercials seem to be American pride, not DEI, you know?
I think I told you what I went through here with two different events that I went to.
Yeah, yeah.
I went to a Latin night,
Lattice.
and everybody was dressed up in red, white, and blue, singing "I'm proud to be an American." And then I went to another place. Maybe it's because I'm, near Palm Springs, West Palm. Could be, but there's no doubt that it's here. I don't know if it's going on in the rest of the world or not, but it's here. It looked like it was last night at the Super Bowl too.
Yeah, yeah. It certainly seems that way. And I think a lot of the big corporates have changed their tune, instead of having and
Even the Bud commercials.
yeah, the Bud commercials, the Harrison Ford Jeep commercial
Yeah,
was, all of those commercials were really focused on bringing people together, pro America, we got that behind us. Put that in the rearview mirror. Let's get
they're
together.
saying military enrollment's up too, which is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's hope it continues. Let's
All
hope
right,
we
well,
get
you
on
have a good
track.
day.
You too. And once again, please subscribe, ring the bell, get some new content, and let us know what your thoughts are. Thanks
Yeah,
for
folks,
sticking
I
out
mean,
this long.
let me just say something about that. If you like at all listening to any of this, do your best to ring a bell and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Support it, send some comments in, tell us we're assholes. We can deal with it. We've spent all those years
That's right.
having been told
That's
that.
right.
So we're okay with that.
What was
If
the
there's
go
an
with
issue.
famous line? With the obvious exception of myself, you are the biggest asshole in the market.
Ivan Sands.
Ivan says, may you rest in peace. With the obvious exception of myself, you are the biggest asshole in the
Very
market.
profound. It's very profound. He said some amazing things, and that could have been the highlight.
That's right. All right. Well, listen, you have a great day. We'll catch up the rest of the week.
Take care, Fred.
Bye.